Good evening and welcome along to another Monday Night Live here on the Red Tinted Glasses YouTube channel at the slightly earlier time of 6 p.m. and good to see many of you still joining us live despite the earlier time. So good to see maybe some of you are subscribed with notifications on as well. Calum, sadly, it is not 3 points we're going to be talking about on the episode today. But coming up on the episode, we will be looking back at what was a positive performance despite defeat. Ultimately, no points taken from the game. We'll discuss the new arrival as James McGarry joins the Dons from Central Coast Mariners. And also with 2 cup games now coming up, we'll take a look as cup fever potentially hits Pittodrie as well. So lots to pack in the next hour or so. But before we get into the game, Calum, there was a new look Pittodrie. What was your thoughts on how Pittodrie looked in the Mediterranean heat, as Brendan Rodgers called it yesterday?
That is high praise from Brod, didn't we? It looks quite nice, you know. I'm not sure about the uncovered dugouts for when it hits like November. Surely they're gonna have to have a look at that. You would think the big boards, they look lovely. The scoreboards, they look good. However, annoyed that I am like underneath them, so I have to turn around and will probably cause some strain on my neck, and I can't just look across to the main stand. I don't know why they got rid of them over there as well. I felt that would have been useful too, to have just the time. Nothing don't have to be scored, just the time. That would have been nice, but it looked good. I'm impressed.
Yeah, you know, it looked very smart. Even the Astro bit going up the side of the main stand looked very smart as well. I do agree on the timing screen in the bottom corner between the red shed and the main stand, because where I stand in the red shed, the timing on the scoreboard's kind of blocked by the pillars. So usually the bottom left hand corner was suited. So maybe some feedback for those at the club that tune into the show. But no, I thought it looked very smart. Certainly when you look back on the highlights as well, with the screens going 3 ways around the pitch as well. Did you spot the badge in the main stand as well? They've got like a red sheet with the club badge, like kind of right above like the directors area in the main stand as well. Ian spotted that, and he also spotted that we've got new nets for this season as well. So a really fresh look for the season ahead.
I am not nearly as eagle-eyed as Ian in that case. No, I did not see them.
But no, a fresh look. But on the dugouts as well, I also did point out about the roof as well, not being taken off. And what I would have quite liked is if we chucked a roof on our dugout and just left the away one exposed, especially for winter. That would be some shithousery I would get behind as well.
Oh, absolutely. Make ours heated for the winter as well, not theirs. Perfect.
Yeah, exactly. Let the mind games begin. Mind games certainly began, if you were following Aberdeen on Twitter, when Johnny Hayes appeared in the video checking into Pittodrie pre-match, but Johnny Hayes was not checking in for the match as he was absent from the starting 11. Ryan Duncan, absent from the squad last week, straight in to play at left wing back. I suppose it kind of heightened how makeshift our defence was. We'll come on to Ryan Duncan in a bit, because I actually thought he had a decent game, all things considered. But I suppose it kind of heightens the sense of getting new signing James McGarry into the country and up to speed as soon as possible after he joined the Dons from Central Coast Mariners. Calum, I know you're excited by that signing, but I think that team news yesterday certainly just made how evident getting a signing into our defence was.
Oh, absolutely. I was terrified at the prospect of Mackenzie and Hayes up against the likes of Lee Lobada in our preview for the Celtic game. And then when I saw that it was likely going to be Ryan Duncan, my nerves were heightened even more. However, I do agree that he did well. I think it does emphasise the fact that we still need bodies in the door, hopefully sooner rather than later. I think it's quite lucky with the fact it's Cup next week rather than another league fixture as well. I think that does help a little bit. But yes, excited for James McGarry. Hopefully he goes straight in. And I believe he landed in Aberdeen last night as well. So encouraging. Whether he's too jet lagged for training today, I'm not sure. But it would have been good if he could get on the grass and get involved.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll be excited to get going. And you sent me the article that the Press and Journal did with his Wellington Phoenix manager, calling him a fantastic player and person, and a left back that likes to bomb forward and put dangerous crosses into the box. So those little tidbits are certainly enough to get you excited, and it'll be good to have a natural left back in that position and someone that can naturally play fullback as well, because that was obviously the way we went in yesterday's game. And there was a bit of discussion on our last episode about will that back three with wing backs work at home. And I think certainly first half, it did suit us, and we were the better team, certainly in the opening 10 minutes, but for large parts of that first half, caused Celtic no end of problems.
Absolutely. I was very much encouraged. I was terrified going into the game. I thought there's a chance we get blown out of the water, but also in the back of my mind, thinking about Celtic's performance the week before against Ross County, where they conceded 2 goals at Parkhead. I thought we started well. The crowd, well behind the side. It was fantastic to see such a big crowd at Pittodrie in our opening game of the season at home. And we started well. It's a shame we didn't capitalise on any, because Celtic, to be honest, throughout the game, especially in the first half, though, looked very, very nervy at times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you spoke about that in the preview about causing Celtic problems and maybe playing on maybe some of the nerves that they possessed, and Naroki as well, and their backline really had a torrid time up against Miovski and Tony Ralston as well, who Natasha Meikle pointed out as a potential weak link for us to exploit. Duke was having a field day against him in the first half as well, and I felt the opening 10 minutes, they really seemed to drag on. It seemed like we'd been playing for half an hour and we'd only played for 10. That we were very much the better team. We obviously had that early chance with the Miovski free kick. Should Leighton Clarkson have taken it? Maybe. Could Miovski have got the shot away sooner before being fouled? Maybe. But I feel the game took a very similar pattern to the opening day of the season for Celtic in the sense that Ross County were very much the better team for the opening 10 minutes, didn't take their chances, and Celtic went up the pitch and scored. And we suffered the same fate yesterday as well.
It's typical, isn't it? How many times have we seen that up here at Pittodrie, especially, where we'd start well and you think, oh my God, we've got a chance here. And then first chance they get, they hit the back of the net. And it was the same thing, essentially, on Sunday as well, which is very, very frustrating. But I'm glad we set out the way we did in terms of taking the game to them. I think that was encouraging. And certainly when you think back to last season's performance against them around Christmas, where we failed to have a shot, I think, let alone a shot on target, and then eventually they ended up winning anyway. I was very happy that we set out to have a go at them, and you felt we could actually get something from the game.
Yeah, no, I absolutely, and we put a thing up on Twitter yesterday about people letting us know your thoughts on the game, and we'll come to some of them that I was kind of scrolling through before we came live, and a lot of people kind of had that general consensus that at least we're now, going into a game against the old firm, whether it be Celtic or Rangers, knowing that we've got a team that's going to actually take the game to them and not sit in and absorb maybe some of the pressure, and then, just not be competitive in the game as well. I do feel kind of towards the end of the game, we weren't maybe as competitive, but again, more on that later, because that lack of substitutions raised its head again. But on the first goal, Calum, would you agree? I put it in the notes as well that I felt it was very much against the run of play. But, watching the highlights back, it is a frustrating goal because it's an absolutely needless free kick from probably one of our most experienced players on the pitch. Tony Ralston's going nowhere. Graham Shinney runs into the back of them, right in front of the Celtic fans as well. The linesman's going to probably bay to that pressure as well. That's the tinfoil hat on. It's an obvious free kick as well, and we just don't defend it. I spoke about defensive mistakes yesterday on Twitter, and somebody had replied saying we're all the goals defensive mistakes, but certainly looking back at the first goal yesterday, it was mistakes because it was poor from Shinney giving away the free kick. Mackenzie barely gets off the ground to compete for the header against Dyson Mieda. Boya Miovski lets Abada run off him too easily. And I don't actually know, probably the only one thing that Dante didn't do well in the game yesterday, I don't actually know what he was doing, coming off from whoever he was marking, that in the end played Lil Abada onside, because certainly from that first angle, he looks a mile off.
Yeah, and then you see it where it's sort of more in line and absolutely onside. And Polvara's the one leading the claims, despite the fact he was the one deeper than everyone else, playing them all onside. But should have got to that point in the first place because we didn't contest well enough when the ball comes into the box. Even prior to that, as you say, very stupid from Shinnie. Actually, we mentioned about the Celtic fans being right behind the linesman when he gave the free kick. Surprised he actually gave it as offside, given they were right behind him, to be fair, as well. You mentioned Jack McKenzie there, though. I'll take this opportunity to give him the credit I think he deserves, because I've not been too sold on Jack McKenzie. I think he's been fine as sort of like as a squad player. He's solid enough, decent backup. But I don't know about you, Glenn, but against Celtic, I thought he coped with things very well because, as I said, that left side in particular was my main concern for this game. And I felt him and Duncan, given their lack of experience, given the fact Duncan's not a defender at all, I thought they both did pretty decent. They did relatively well. I was impressed.
Yeah, I have to agree. I think, we were quite critical of Jack. Certainly on the first few episodes of this season and after the game last week, I was critical of him as well and his inability using his right foot. But I thought he more than held his own yesterday, and coming up against somebody like Kyogo, I'm going to be a bit critical of him at the second goal. I know obviously it's primarily Nicky Devlin's fault, but I've got a comment that on that, because we'll come to that in a second. But all round, I think he was extremely solid, as you say, given who the left wing back was. I think he can be proud of his performance despite obviously the defeat, which continues to annoy me, saying that we should be proud despite defeat, because ultimately we've come away from that game with nothing. But there's positives to take from the defeat. Am I happy? No, because we lost the game. But there are things that certainly from the week before against Livingston was a marked improvement and gives me encouragement going forward. And as a lot of people have said, in the comments tonight on the episode and online as well last night, we didn't have that first or strongest defense that we could play yesterday, and probably still weak in maybe a couple of other areas as well. So if that was certainly a marked improvement, can we get stronger going forward once we add the extra bodies that this team needs as well?
Oh yeah, I mean, absolutely hope so. I do agree in that. Like, I'm not happy with the result. I'm not happy with it, but I'm encouraged by the performance, at least going off of, as you say, Livingston, going off the fact we do need more bodies, and they've still put in that sort of shift. A lot of inexperienced guys in the starting 11 as well. I think about Polvara, Morris, relatively inexperienced, McKenzie still, Ryan Duncan. And also based off the last performance against Celtic up here as well, probably the last 5, you could probably say. I think there's reasons to be hopeful going forward, and I suppose you do need to caveat that with Celtic under a new manager, and whenever they change manager, it seems to be they start out a bit sticky and then they'll hit a run of form and be absolutely brilliant.
And I think as well, Rubezic as well probably could also put in there in terms of inexperience as well. Only a second game in Scottish football, also still young. I felt it was a bit harsh. Richard Gordon quoted one of his pals on Sportsound yesterday, comparing him to Alex Gogic, or having the look of Alex Gogic. I think certainly Rubezic is rough around the edges, but you've got to remember, still young, still learning the Scottish game anyway. But there is a player in there, but there was you probably are going to find these more in games against Celtic than you would against Livingston. Maybe slight flaws that do need kind of smoothed out. But on the whole, I thought he was decent enough yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely. Thought he sort of held his own a couple of times, as you say, maybe caught out. But what player isn't rough around the edges at 23, let alone when they're coming across from Serbia as well, only been here a very short time. I thought with the ball at his feet doesn't look fantastic. However, that's probably not his game. And when we do have a fully fit side, he'll probably be planked in between two better players rather as ball players, and he's sort of in there as that destroyer. And I have a feeling that destroy he certainly will at some point again, I suppose.
Yeah. I suppose going 1-0 down after kind of dominating that early exchanges was always going to be kind of a question on how we react and how the crowd react as well. Certainly I felt in the Red Shed there was kind of a lift up of atmosphere. I don't know what you felt in the South Stand as well. There was kind of a sense of encouragement to keep going in the way we were playing. And it wasn't for a lack of trying. We had chances galore in that first half. Graham Shinney probably should do better, at least hitting the target with the header that he had from roughly around the penalty spot area. Dante Polvara had a couple of headers himself. One, again, he was probably unlucky with the one that I'm thinking of was the one he headed down into the ground. And if he heads it probably either side of Joe Hart, it causes Joe Hart a bit more problems than heading it down right at Joe Hart's feet. Dante as well, an excellent shot, and Keith told me at half-time he was right behind that, and that was curling into the bottom corner had it not been for Cameron Carter-Vickers' big toe probably that puts it past the post. I mean, it was an absolutely unbelievable block, but we were working hard to get back into the game, and as you said, as well as certainly speaking about that early exchanges, the Celtic defence were really rattled, and I think it said a lot, and people have been commenting on it as well, is the fact that every time Celtic were getting a defensive throw-in, Greg Taylor felt the need to take 10, 15 yards up the pitch just to make sure that it was an extra incentive to relieve any of that pressure that they were under.
I suppose for us, very annoying. If you look at it sort of more objectively, clever, I guess, and maybe the type of thing we should allow to creep into our game from our fullbacks, especially. And David Stewart saying the double overhead kick would have been funny if it went in. I can't believe that happened. Good to see they're both on the same wavelength, if not sort of more in sync of what's actually going to be beneficial for the team, but comical nonetheless. But we did have plenty of chances, and I know ultimately it was the same end result as that sort of 1-0 game that I keep referring back to. But I'd so much rather we had a go, and you think actually there's a chance of us getting something here, and probably in the end we could have had something.
Yeah, no, I think so. I think we had enough chances first half anyway to win that game, and it wasn't for a lack of trying, and it was good play, I guess. Well, I was having this discussion at work where the argument was it good play or was it a bit of fortune with the ball forward from Ryan Duncan? Because a lot of the time that we were playing balls over the top, we were utilising the pace of Duke and Miovski getting in behind the Celtic defence. And look, I'm not taking anything away from Ryan Duncan. It was just a point that was made to me at work today, because I think it was a good ball from Ryan Duncan. He knew that if he put that ball in that area, Duke was going to chase that cause down. And he was playing on the fact that Joe Hart wasn't really coming for much. And there was that bit of indecision in the Celtic backline. And Duke, maybe he doesn't always look the liveliest, but give him something to chase and he's going to go after it. And he uses that strength and puts it on a plate for Bojan to score his first league goal of the season and send Pittodrie rightly wild after all that, pressure finally paid off.
Absolutely. I think credit to Ryan Duncan for that ball into Duke. I thought that ball was sort of on all day long. Certainly, probably a bit more so in the first half than the second half. I think Calum McGregor was sitting a little bit deeper, maybe the defence as well, a little bit deeper to try and protect against that. But excellent execution from Duncan in the end, and superb work from Duke to put it on the plate for Miovski, and thoroughly enjoyable. We had a goal to celebrate against them for fucking once, so that's at least something, I suppose.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And as David McLennan says, we had pace with Duke and Morris that was worrying them for a bit. As I said, primarily in the first half. Shayden Morris definitely had some good runs in the second half. I think it was him that was absolutely sided down by Calum McGregor in front of Section S in the second half. Shayden Morris, a player that was very much out of the picture last season with injuries, and we weren't sure what kind of role he would have this season. I think it's fair to say he had his best game in an Aberdeen shirt yesterday, Calum.
Yeah, I think so. And once again, we reiterate, not his natural position either. I thought he did fine against Livingston, but that was certainly an improvement against Celtic. Not an easy task. I think you still see sort of defensive lapses in his game, but to be expected when he's asked to play a role that he's not used to. And it's encouraging, and you wonder what sort of performances you'll be able to get if we are able to field a proper defence and we can push him further up the park.
Well, that was kind of going to be my question kind of a bit later on, but where does Shayden Morris feature in this team then if our strongest defence kind of comes back? And we've certainly been speaking about pushing Nicky Devlin out to right wing back. Where do you put Shayden Morris in this Aberdeen team based on what you've seen so far this season?
Well, I mean, to be fair, based on what I've seen so far this season, there's not room for him, given the fact we don't play with wingers. However, I still am holding out hope that once we are able to play a sort of settled, balanced back four, we will do so in the games where it would suit us, in the games where we're going to be in control a little bit more, and we can afford to put players a bit further up the park, and we don't need to have three centre backs. And in that case, then he probably sits on the opposite wing from Duke on the right hand side, and I think there will be times where that's the case, and I'm sure he'll do an apt job. Well, I'm not sure. I hope he'll do an apt job, and I've seen a bit more to convince me that he will lately.
But as David Stewart points out as well, he was breathing out his arse after 65 minutes, and he should have been subbed. And I have to agree on that point. I did think he tired badly, certainly the last 20 minutes. And as David McLennan points out as well, we have Wardadius getting no minutes in the current defence, and that was kind of going to be my point between what Dave, the two Davids actually have just said. It is the fact that when Esther Sokler was away to come on and grace the pitch, I thought, oh, here we go, Dante's away to get moved to right wing back again. I thought it was going to be a similar sub to Livingston, but I mean, how out of or not up to speed is Ordadia? Because when we spoke to Yossi on the podcast about him, he said, he'd been involved in the Hapoel Beersheva training camp. I think I saw Phil Mayer speaking about the kind of fitness comments from that Newcastle United thing on Amazon about Anthony Gordon saying he thought he was fit until he came to Newcastle, but he realised he wasn't Newcastle fit. So I wonder if Barry Robson has kind of a fitness expectation for his players, and those players aren't meeting it. And I also saw kind of a counter argument to this lack of substitutions, that all the players wear those sports bras that have got the little data feeders going back, and maybe players are still hitting their potentials. But it was kind of a little bit concerning for me going into that last 20 minutes, because obviously at that point, 70 minutes, we were still only one goal behind. Celtic were continuing to kind of cause us problems down that right-hand side, and Shayden Morris, unfortunately, couldn't kind of track back. But there was absolutely kind of no reluctance to bring it on. I'm sure you've already seen the comment from No Blaha there. Vinny for Morris at 70-75 for him was obvious. But maybe Vinny's fallen out of favour. Again, exactly, Vinny's there, a player that could have given us that bit of pace. Just a reluctance to use it. So for me, again, that was a frustration that once again we only used one of our 5 allotted substitutions.
Yes, I was not happy. I suppose in terms of Vinny, if it was going to be for Morris, that would probably require us on going to 4, and then we don't have the right players to do that at the moment with who's fit, because Vinny at right wing back is probably, it's going to go worse than Shayden Morris at right wing back, even a leggy Shayden Morris at that point. You feel on the point you mentioned where I think it was Anthony Gordon who was fit but not Newcastle United fit. Barry Robson has talked a lot about, in fact, most of his press conferences and things he talks about running, and simply running and fighting, and maybe players aren't up to that sort of speed as of yet, which is a concern. Whether that's relating to their attitudes or how far off it they were when they came back for pre-season or joined us midway through, then I'm not sure. But it's worrying that we're only using one sub. I think we sort of struggled a lot more in the second half. Cal McGregor was sitting a lot deeper, controlling things. And I think we definitely tired, because Celtic were using the ball pretty well for a bit more of the second half than they were the first. And the fact we aren't turning to our bench, it sort of makes me think, well, how many signings does he fucking need at this point? Is it more than we all think? Because right now he's going to Sokler every time, and it's Sokler every time, all twice. But in games where the strikers aren't getting chances, once again, you need people who are able to provide a bit of energy to get high up the park and support to anyone who can unlock a defence, create a chance. Is Conor Barry not that man? Is Bowen not that man? What is going on? I've only seen him at Stirling Albion, I suppose. I don't know.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's all well and good bringing on another striker, but if you don't have the wide players with the energy to provide the service, then it's absolutely pointless and really defeats the purpose. So, but only Barry knows why he's not utilising the subs. Is he making a point about the depth or quality that he has on the bench? Does it go down to him not trusting those players? Does it go down to attitude? Who knows? Is it down to his own stubbornness? You could name off loads of things. Only Barry will be able to answer that question. If there's any journalists that want to ask that question at his next press conference, feel free, rather you than us, because no doubt he'll have a very stern reply to that question. But it's a question that is going to end up getting asked of him if it continues this way as well. Back on the events on the pitch, of course, after getting ourselves back into the game and looking like the better team, once again, we absolutely shoot ourselves in the foot. Nicky Devlin with an absolute moment of madness. I'm sure you and Rankin was hoping that was going to be on week 1, not in week 2. But you just cannot make a mistake like that and give the ball to a player of Kyogo's quality in so much space.
No, at the time, I've obviously only seen it once, been at the game. I didn't even realise how bad the header actually was. I just thought, like, even if that's a good header, it's a very risky game to play with Kyogo lurking there. And obviously, he had no idea he was there, but somebody has to give him a shout as well. I suppose there's that's got to play into it. Make him aware he can't do that. But the header was shocking. Thankfully, after shaking a couple of minutes, he seemed to recover very well. Obviously, cleaning one off the line later on, but it was absolute lunacy. And what's more annoying for me, I wasn't even annoyed at Devlin. It was just the momentum that we lost in that game. And we, equalised 4 minutes earlier. We were on the ascendancy. They've been looking shaky, and you're thinking this could be there for us to go on to win. And 4 minutes after we equalise, we go and hand them something like that, and the wind is sapped. The wind is sapped. The energy is sapped. The wind's out of our sails. Yeah. I got the cliches right eventually.
Yeah, you got there in the end, and I think you're totally spot on as well. And I think what is more draining for the crowd as well is the fact that it wasn't, Celtic didn't need to work for that goal as well. We literally handed them on a plate. But I don't know if you've gone back and watched the highlights, but I made a comment on it in the notes. And again, this was mentioned to me by Stephen at work about how close Nicky Devlin actually gets back to blocking the shot from Kyogo as well. He absolutely bursts a gut to atone for his error. And both Rubezic and Jack McKenzie have got a couple of yards on Nicky Devlin, and he leaves both players well behind in terms of actually trying to atone for the error. Whether or not, Ruby and Jack are kind of just caught a bit flat-footed by it, or just kind of know what to expect. But yeah, if you watch that second goal back, at least Nicky's trying to atone for that error and doesn't just stand and go, well, I know I've fucked up, basically.
Yeah, or blame others for not giving him a shout or anything. He goes and tries to rectify mistakes, which once you've made the mistake, that's all you can do. And I think he was absolutely pelting it back, and he ended up wiping McKenzie out, or vice versa in the end anyway. But frustrating. Hopefully that's it out of his system now at this stage. That would be nice. But he responded well in the end. He seems an honest player, and what I did like also, as to put another positive spin on it as well, is straight after the ball hit the back of the net, there's players going like, "Don't worry about it. Let's get back into this game," and they're reassuring him, which is good, because it can imagine it could have been a very lonely place out there for Nicky Devlin at that point.
Yeah. A few of you as well, Skokesler and Kaiser, saying that Cal Rose actually got a hand to the second goal as well. I don't know. I couldn't really see from the red shed. Could you see that from Section S? Or
I wasn't sure. I was just like, I was more to the point. I was more just thinking, for fuck's sake, head in hands kind of thing. But wasn't sure. I did think it was actually a good finishing. I mean, I think regardless of whether he got a hand to it or not, with that power, it was always going to hit the back of the net.
Yeah, just disappointing to end up going in at half-time 2-1 down. And, Celtic come out at the start of the second half, making 2 changes, one forced for an injury to Cameron Carter-Vickers. They saw Stephen Welsh come on and Rio Hatate. I don't think that one was actually announced to the crowd, but he came on in place of David Turnbull. Came on for 25 minutes and absolutely controlled the game, cruised through that game, and then what do you think? He pulled his hamstring and walked off. I mean, Celtic didn't add to their goals in that 25-minute spell. I mean, they came close on a couple of occasions. Devlin had his block on Dyson Mieda's attempt as well. But what I think was so important in that 25 minutes cameo from Rio Hatate was how Celtic moved the ball and how Celtic used the ball. Barry Robson wanted to speak about the possession, and he said Celtic were kind of camped in the second half. I actually disagree with that from Barry. I don't think they were camped in at all. I think they moved us from side to side and looked to kind of drag us out of position, which I think then in turn kind of affected us that last 20 minutes. As Brendan Rodgers said, it was a hot day, sun was beating down. The last thing we kind of wanted to do was probably be chasing shadows and chasing the ball. And I remember actually saying, probably about 10, 15 minutes into the second half, we really just need to kind of get our foot on the ball and just keep it for more than 2 minutes, because we're getting run ragged here. And like, as I said, he didn't kind of do anything directly to influence the game, but his range of passing and the way he controlled that midfield probably ultimately led to the game being taken away from us in the final 20 minutes.
Yeah, probably. I think they used the ball very well for the most part in the second half. The ball was doing most of the work for them, the way they were spraying it about, and we were getting absolutely knackered, as you say, in that heat, trying to chase it down, trying to get in their faces. And when Celtic decide to do that, it's very difficult for you, admittedly, which is tough. And then I suppose that's where you look into it, where why wasn't there then more fresh legs brought on to help the cause, particularly, especially in midfield for me. I thought Polvara did very well, but I thought he was struggling by the end of it. And at that point, you're thinking, especially once the third went in, I was like, why not just get some extra energy on that part so we don't suffer an embarrassment here, which ultimately we never did, but could have been possible. No. You know what they're like when they get in their groove.
But I think as well is that, you obviously want to make a substitution to impact the game in a positive manner as well. But you could also make a substitution to almost break up the momentum that Celtic were having as well. Because by making a substitution in that kind of time period, they've got to think about, well, what is he coming on for? What is he going to do to influence the game? Why have they done that? But we just kind of let Celtic just dictate large parts of that second half. And whilst, yes, there is positives to take from Sunday, there is still huge frustrations for me in parts of that game as well. Speaking, though, of the kind of making subs after it going 3-1 as well, whatever happened to this countless amount of injury time that was supposed to happen? Scottish football not happened, because how there was only 4 minutes of injury time in that second half, I'll never know, because I remember looking up at the clock and saying, there's 3 minutes to go of the 90. There surely got to be at least 7-8 minutes, because there was a couple of injuries and substitutions as well.
VAR check for the Hart thing. When he wiped out Sockler. Lucky boy, by the way.
Well, miles offside, so I mean...
I know, but still, by the way, I mentioned this. Obviously, he's miles offside, but you still can't just wipe someone out without any sort of, not even a talking to, like, fucking be careful. Mental.
But yeah, no, that was one thing I picked up on, was that as well. I suppose as well in the second half, David McLean mentioned it in the comments as well about how we seem to often bypass the midfield going forward in the game yesterday. We didn't bypass the midfield for this opportunity when Calla Roast launched it to Leighton Clarkson, who excellent first touch to take it down. Brilliant run, did all the hard work. And unfortunately, the finish was lacking in what was our only attempt of the second half. I couldn't believe it didn't find the bottom corner. I just thought after the pass control and all the work, it was just going to be an absolutely perfect goal. I'm sure he's absolutely furious with himself that he didn't find the bottom corner, but are you a bit furious that we didn't create more than that one opportunity in the second half?
Yeah, I suppose in terms of attempts, but there's two particular occasions that I remember where we put extremely good balls into the box, but just had no one like even near it, even near making the right run. Ryan Duncan played one across. It was across the ground, and it sort of went across the 6 yard box, like almost right across. And if Miovski, instead of standing on the penalty spot, had made a move towards the near post, could have had an easy finish, which was very, very frustrating. But I suppose encouraging in terms of Ryan Duncan. And another one was I was going to say Mikey Devlin. Good Lord, how many times are we going to do that this season? Nicky Devlin sort of stood one up towards the back post, and then no one attacking the back post. Very, very frustrating, especially in games like that where eventually, we've slogged it out in the heat, and you do get those sort of opportunities to put good balls into the box. How many times have we seen a perfect opportunity and we've put a shite ball into the box? John Hayes, I'm looking at you. And we've actually stood it up well or rolled it across the 6 yard box very, very well. None of them have cut it out, and there's just not one of our guys making the right run. Very, very, very frustrating.
Yeah, that Ryan Duncan Miovski one in particular stands out for me as the kind of most frustrating opportunity of the second half.
And you'd expect Miovski to that's his sort of bread and butter. Yeah. You'd expect him to make that exact move. How many times have we seen that exact goal?
Yeah, it would have been almost a carbon copy of the goal he scored in the first half as well. Obviously, just not on the same wavelength as Duke. And yeah, just a frustrating one. Obviously, as you said, the only kind of other opportunity we had in that half was when Esther Sokler was wiped out by Joe Hart. Just disappointed he was so far offside. Joe Hart, having a very weird game. He very much liked to punch the ball. But I did actually notice a tactic that we seem to use from corners was that Shayden Morris was kind of almost holding the bottom of Joe Hart's shirt when the ball came in, so he couldn't kind of get out quickly. But I noticed it really evidently at one corner, and I thought, see if this was a goal and it gets ruled out because of that, I'm going to be really pissed off. But there was obviously a little bit of like sneaky tactics kind of going on
I like it
there. Third goal, though, just totally kills the game. I saw someone mention it in the comments. I don't know if I actually starred it or not as well. No, I didn't. I think it was Roy Thompson mentioned about the possible offside from Dyson Mieda in the build-up, and I thought that as well.
Yeah.
No idea why that wasn't checked or if it was, but there certainly didn't seem to be a pause for a check.
Couldn't check it after because he didn't put his flag up to give it. As once it's saved, then it's a new phase of play. Can't go back and change it, which is the problem with the rule. Because if things like that happen and then so they've still got possession after a save or whatever, because the linesman's going, I better not put it up just in case it's offside, and I'll let VAR do its job when he scores. By the way, he absolutely should have scored. He took it far too wide. No idea what the fuck he was doing.
Yeah.
But the fact the linesman was relying on VAR to make the decision for him, then that didn't happen because there wasn't a goal. And then in the next phase of play, they go and score. And we suffer as a result of it. I mean, it absolutely killed the game. I would be maybe doubtful the fact we're going to come back into it anyway, but very fucking annoying.
Yeah, no, and then, showing kind of the legginess as well. Shayden Morris just kind of letting the runner in, and Matt O'Reilly has an easy finish and celebrates in front of fan of the show, Jay Moyer, who looked absolutely furious, like I'm sure most of us were as well.
It was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Not but you were like, or I think Jay posted on social media, and just having a look at that. If you've not seen it, go and watch this third goal. You just see Jay with a face like a burst of arse in the background, which might cheer you up a little bit.
Yeah, no, I'm just sorry that someone actually mistook Jay for you as well and thought it was you that was absolutely raging as well.
Both handsome boys with lovely moustaches. Thank you very much.
Overall, though, Calum, 1 point after 2 games. Probably 2 points, I'd say, behind where most of us expected to be at this stage in the season. You're not going to really kind of look too much at the table 2 games in as well, but with kind of tough games coming up in September and a away trip to St Mirren next in the league, a point that I saw made as well on social media was so far for teams playing in Europe on a Thursday night, 3 games, 0 wins So just showing that the Sunday, Thursday can have an impact on this squad and teams in general. What's your thoughts overall after yesterday and kind of going into the next few league games? Obviously, we're going to come and talk about Stirling next, but I just want your thoughts on league specifically.
I mean, you mentioned 3 games, no wins afterwards. We've not even played and we've not had a win afterwards anyway. So that's a bit of a concern. But to be honest, the Livingston point, in hindsight, now that the dust has settled a little bit, obviously we've only got 1 point after 2 games. But in context, Livingston teams are going to go there and not even pick up a point. To be honest, teams will go there and struggle. It might not be the best. It wasn't the most attractive game, but people will come off worse. I thought the Celtic performance was far better. Once again, left with no points, which is obviously very disappointing. And I felt like we could have taken at least a point from that game. But there was reasons to be encouraged. A couple of weeks before our next league game, I think providing, with a couple of additions by that point, even a little bit more depth, so Barry can make some more fucking substitutes. I think we're actually in an okay spot, although the next few league games are tough.
Yeah, no, they are, and I think that's why we need to look at the next 2 games coming up in terms of building momentum. But just a final point from Stewie Walker that replied to our tweet in terms of the full-time thoughts, and in terms of the approach and attitude on Sunday, he said that we got it bang on. I think it's fair to say I think most of us as Aberdeen fans would agree with that point from Stu. I think you'd agree with that as well.
I would.
Yeah. But the difference as well, what a difference with a manager who believes in his players, but we just shot ourselves in the foot against a clinical side. And then finishes it off by saying, can we get a message out to stop the pump fishing when the lineups are announced every single week? I've stopped doing it publicly, but I have to admit that I was concerned when I saw Ryan Duncan at left wing back. But yes, I think he definitely surprised a few with his performance. So I think a fair point, well made by Stewie.
Fair, maybe that's directed at me more. To be fair, I was very, very concerned about Ryan Duncan playing at left wing back, but he did a good job. I thought Mackenzie did a very good job as well. Polvara didn't look out of place against the likes of McGregor, Hatate, O'Reilly, which can only be a good thing given how few games he's played for us.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can continue to build on that, with the more game time he gets, then that's good news. Morris looks okay at right wing back, which if he's playing his actual position, you'd hope we'd be able to upgrade that okay to a good. I think there's definitely reasons to be encouraged, and if we can build on that rather than just take it as okay, that's good, and not build on it, then I think we'll be in a good spot. And I know you're concerned about September massively as well, but hopefully I reassured you earlier with what I said.
Yeah, with a positive, a favourable maybe October, but yeah, playing both the Edinburgh sides and Rangers in September is filling me with a bit of dread just now. But, reasons for encouragement, yes. Reasons for cheerful, well, we're Aberdonian. We find it very hard to be cheerful at the best of times, don't we?
Yeah, we're miserable bastards.
Really are, and we're not afraid to admit that. Right, on to cup competitions. First of all, it's a return of Friday night football as the Dons get their Viaplay Cup competition campaign underway at Fourth Bank against Stirling Albion. But before I come on to that, Calum, I just want to mention the upcoming Europa League playoff game, either against BK Häcken or Vilnius. I'll still cover myself as well, despite the Swedes holding a 3-1 second leg. Tickets are on sale and, as has been pointed out in the comments, are selling well. Although I would take that with a pinch of salt just now, because I think season ticket seats are currently held until a week tomorrow. I think it's the 22nd season ticket seats are being held until. So that's why it currently looks like there are such strong ticket sales. Pricing though, Calum, a few people have commented about the pricing of the playoff. £32 for those sitting in the lower deck or in platinum areas, £30 for gold, 25 for the likes of myself in the red shed. I don't know what kind of area that's covered by.
Just red shed. Actually, haven't looked at it. It's literally just red shed.
Is it? I mean, I've paid the money mainly because my bet came in at the weekend, but I can't help but feel it's slightly on the high side for this game, given that we've got the guarantee of 3 other European games to come.
I think it's steep. I think it's a bit steep. I won't be there because I'm in another country, but I would buy a ticket regardless. But looking at £28 for it would be for me in the South Standards section S. I don't know. I think. Do you think it would be cheaper if when we're in the Conference League, or is this the prices we're looking at, or will it be more expensive because it's group stages? Because you think for this one in particular, knowing that there's going to be 3 more home games in Europe, regardless, it's a good chance to get to the Europa League group stages. I know tickets will sell well anyway, but take the prices a little bit down and make sure it fucking sells out.
Yeah, I can't help but feel that they've kind of just misjudged it slightly, in my opinion. And I think, I was speaking to fans of Hibs and Hearts, and I know Hearts for their game against Rosenborg, they're £20. I know it's obviously around before us as well. Lee Seymour in the comments there pointing out that it was only £28 to watch us play Bayern Munich back in 2008. Now, I know obviously since 2008, costs of everything has gone up tenfold, it feels like. But
about 45 quid that now.
yeah. I think, personally, I think we should have priced this game about £20. As you say, ensure that Pittodrie is absolutely packed out to the rafters and get us into that Europa League if that's where the club want to be as well. I know there's a lot of discussion about should we be a Europa League or Conference League. I think we've got to have that mentality about getting into the Europa League first and foremost. But speaking on the group stage games, I can't help but hope that if anyone's tuning in from the club and has not seriously thought about this, is that we do release a 3-game package, priced at £60. I was saying about 55. You're just over.
You bastard.
Yeah. Ian said, £20 a game is fair for all 3. That would still be a £15 saving for me on the upcoming playoff game. But I'm thinking about what I am for my Scotland season ticket as well. I think it works out just over or around about £18 a game for that. And that included for me this campaign games against Spain and Norway, and that's for me I think quite excellent value for money. So I hope the club are seriously looking at something like that with a little bit of a discount for those that buy a 3-game package, because I think that would be one way of guaranteeing strong sales.
Absolutely. I think so. I hope they do look into it. I think it's just an opportunity to sell a little bit more tickets. A free pie per game. Not macaroni and black pudding, by the way. I was very disappointed.
Oh, were you?
Yeah, I was disappointed. It was fine, but I was disappointed. I was a little bit let down. I don't think the black pudding was quite the good stuff in my books. But yes, sell them as a package. Get the tickets sold. Get the place packed out. The old lady packed out. And if you are embroiled in the Auto Cup scheme, please remember, not like my pal who messaged me and was like, "Oh fuck, I've just been scammed out of money." No, you clicked to go in the Auto Cup scheme, mate, you idiot.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to the thumbnails that we're going to have for the European games coming up, because I know Sarah's given us the photo from the game on Sunday from her seat in the lower deck, and it's going to be looking good when the sunset kind of comes in for those European games upcoming. There'll be some good thumbnails coming up anyway.
Well, providing I can pull something together, that is. I just can't wait to go. Whoa! Like every week for a while. I'm looking forward to that.
That's the Europa League theme tune for just anyone that might try and take that out of context there. Right. As I said, coming up then on Friday is a trip to Stirling. Probably a sold out stadium there. Certainly a sold out away end anyway. But this isn't going to be the easy tie that people expect. I think, we've been scarred enough in recent seasons about playing lower league sides in these competitions. Wraith in particular in this one. Obviously, we don't need to mention the Scottish Cup from last season.
No.
But the Beanos are unbeaten in competitive action over 90 minutes this season. I think they've only drawn one of those games, and that was against Ayr United in this competition when they went on to lose on penalties. They've won both their opening League One games after winning League Two last season, winning them 1-0 respectively against Edinburgh City and Alloa. And they've won their last 3 games without concession. And the first of those 3 games was when they humbled St Johnstone 4-0. We played them, of course, last season in the group stages, Calum, and won comfortably. Something tells me this is going to have a bit of a different feel to it on Friday night.
I think so. They are flying, really. They've got a great nickname, the Beanos, I'll tell you that much. Darren Young's their gaffer, isn't he?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that'll be interesting seeing a familiar face, I suppose, especially for those who are older, a bit older, Glen. Sorry, but no, they are a good side, and as I say, they won the League Two title. And the fact that they're looking to build on that and maybe not even just solidify themselves as a League One club, decent League One club, maybe try and sneak into that promotion playoffs. Early days yet, of course, but something like that you probably expect from a Stirling side. I mean, they're the only club in the leagues from Stirling. It's a pretty big place. I know they're probably competing with Celtic, Rangers, Hearts, Hibs in that sort of area, but you'd expect them to be well backed, and I'm sure they'll have a good crowd. I think I remember from last year they had a wee a singing section of wee guys, and I'm all for that if they do the same again, and hopefully I'll get a better pie.
Oh, well, I'm sure everyone will be eager to hear your final pie review before you jet off on a couple of weeks holiday and leave me stranded to do this on my own. Of course, I'll be looking for someone to come and co-host with me after the first leg of the Europa League playoff and subsequent games after that. So feel free to get in touch. I'll be paging Johnny Main, Phil Mayer and the likes to see what their availability is as well. On Stirling, as well, as we said, obviously a kind of different kettle of fish. Obviously, we're a bit the same in terms of what faced them last season. I feel we're a bit more kind of work in progress. Obviously, they've probably got that kind of core group that and settled side. You've got Dale Carrick and Paul McLean, who's a defender for them, both on 3 goals already this season. I was watching the highlights of their victory over Alloa at the weekend and opening day game against Edinburgh City as well, to kind of get a bit of a kind of a feel for what they might be like, so that we're not just kind of blindly talking about Stirling Albion here. But in that game on the opening day of the season, I felt they really kind of hassled and harried Edinburgh City really well in terms of pressing for the ball, something that I know that Barry Robson will make sure that we do as well. It was an absolute stunning free kick for the winner, although I'm sure the Edinburgh City keeper will feel he can do a bit better. But compared to the weekend's win over Alloa, well, certainly from what the Stirling Albion TV showed, they had to do a lot more defending, but I thought they did so very well, and I'm sure that's something that Darren Young's going to be preparing his side for this Friday, because I'm sure, well, certainly from our side, we're going to be hoping that there's going to be a lot of defending needed done by the Beanos this weekend.
Absolutely. I'm pretty sure their sort of highlights and coverage for their games at that level, that's pretty good.
It's very good, actually. It's a 7-minute highlight package.
Credit to them, because that's better than some of the shit you get further up here. So credit to them for that, and credit also to Jack McKenzie, his post-match interview after Celtic. I thought he was very mature, and he highlighted the fact that Darvel, sorry to say it, guys, is still raw for everyone at the club, and they are preparing. They're going to be ready, they said. Whether it's Celtic or Stirling, they're going to prepare and play the same way. So encouraging, and hopefully they can walk the walk and not just talk the talk.
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, that's all well and good saying that we're going to, be treating it like Celtic, but we have to actually go out and do that. And one thing that I took from watching the highlights of their victory over Alloa was kind of how good they were in possession, compared to us on Astro anyway. But they really like to kind of use the ball and spread the ball out wide again, kind of similar to ourselves, but we're very good in putting dangerous balls into the box as well. So again, something that we need to kind of be careful of, because I guess going into this game, we spoke about James McGarry joining up with the squad. Does he come into the starting lineup? Angus MacDonald declared himself fit for Friday night as well. Does he come into the starting 11? If so, for who? And Willie Miller mentioned it on the radio as well about how we kind of approach this game. We have to have the right attitude for this game. So we not only have to go into this game being respectful of the opposition, given how well they've started their season, but we also have to go into this with our strongest 11. Do you agree we need to go into this with our strongest 11? If so, I think the question is, what is our strongest 11 right now, Calum?
Funny you ask, Glenn, because we actually haven't prepared this, and I didn't look at the notes until about 5 minutes before we went live. However, earlier, whilst on my lunch, I was thinking about the game, because I'm sad, and I was thinking, what sort of team would I like to see? I would like to see us go with a very strong side. Not quite our strongest 11, however, I'd say. And I'd like to see us go with 4 at the back. There's no need to have 3 centre-backs in this game, I don't feel. I would like to see us play Kelleros, Nicky Devlin at right back, Rubezic and MacDonald. Get MacDonald some minutes under his belt. If he plays 45 minutes, an hour, excellent in the build-up to European games, league games. I'd be happy with that. I'd like to see James McGarry, even if he's just given the sort of same as MacDonald. And ideally, when we're making these changes, we'll be in a nice, comfortable position. That would be good. Polvara, Clarkson, Shinnie as the midfield 3. I think it's working very well. That's strong. You've got a little bit of everything in there as well. Plenty of energy. Clarkson's quality. I like it. Duke, keep building that fitness. I like to see Shotcliffe from the start. Protect Boyan and Duke for Europe. Protect Shotcliffe, start Duke, and the little Marshall boy. I'd like to see him. I want to see him. I don't think he will play, and I just want to see him. I want to see him that he's okay. Make sure he's fine. That's what I like to see. And then you've got the likes of McKenzie on the bench. You've got Barron. You've got Dadia. You've got Morris. You've got Duncan. You've got Miovski. So that's what I'd like to see starting against Stirling. I think that's a good balance of strong whilst also giving other players some minutes as well. And then, when we're hopefully 3-0 up at half time, then we can comfortably take off Angus MacDonald.
Yeah, I think the point Lee Seymour makes about starting Esther Sokler to protect Boyan or Duke, I kind of could see that, rest one and have the other. Although I think probably deep down I'd rather we just start with both up top, continue their working on their partnership. We've seen how in sync they were at the weekend with their overhead kick attempt as well. But either or, I think up front we've got a strong enough quality. Interesting point from Kaiser. He says, I don't think I'd risk MacDonald if we're winning comfortably, maybe take him on the last 20 minutes. I kind of almost agree with this point. Jack McKenzie, only because Jack McKenzie had a good game at the weekend as well. Continue to let him improve. And also, if it's going to be that kind of physical battle, if we've got into that position of being kind of 3-4-0 up as you are hoping for, then you could hopefully bring Angus MacDonald on and he gets that kind of minutes and he's not being bashed about and potentially risking him being out for that important playoff game.
But then it's not intense minutes. It's not proper match situation, is it? And that's how you get him up to speed. If he trains all week and he comes through it fine, give him a little bit of time. Or I suppose maybe then you could take him on at halftime, I guess. I'd like to see him get some decent, meaningful minutes under his belt so we can start to get him back in, because God knows we need it. I'm struggling so much. That's how stressed out I am about this defense.
Well, the Aberdeen B team are also coming up against Peterhead in the Challenge Cup, and I can't remember if that's tomorrow night or next week. And I don't know what the rules and regulations are around that, but could you almost chuck in Angus MacDonald in there to give him some minutes if you want some competitive minutes in his legs there? Because I know Alfie Babbage will be involved in that game as well. Interesting about your comments around Bazowin playing. I'd actually argue put Ryan Duncan in there, continue him in the team from the weekend, because as Barry Robson said in his post-match comments as well, you can play him. You said you can play him in an 8, you can play him on the wing, and now after the weekend you can play him at left wing back as well. So maybe continue the momentum that Ryan Duncan's got from the weekend. I think it also just signals how out of favour Vinny is if we don't see him on Friday at all in any form. I think for me that would probably indicate a likely departure from the club.
At that point, just give him a suitcase of sticky dog pudding and let him be on his way to whoever wants him. I wasn't shaking my head over the inclusion of Ryan Duncan. I'd be happy with Ryan Duncan. I actually did think about that over Bissau, and it's just Barry's comments about him as an 8. I do not think he looked comfortable as an 8 last season at all.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think Barry, a typical ginger after a few hours in the sun was feeling the heat a little bit with some of his comments in the post match because, was saying Celtic were camped in and saying Ryan Duncan looked good in the 8. It was questionable to say the least because, yeah, I agree. I don't think that is a position that suits Ryan Duncan at all. How much on Friday, Calum? Obviously, it's hugely important that we win the game, and not only to build momentum, but it's the performance. A lot of people spoke about the performance on Sunday. Do we need to see an equally good performance on Friday night, or does it just matter about getting through in the cup?
Ultimately, it does only matter about getting through. However, I would love to see us play some excellent, entertaining football, and for me to not be stressed out in Stirling on a Friday night, because that's the last thing we need. Ultimately, it's about getting through and not letting this be another banana skin, which we slip, break our necks in, and maybe have to give up the whole thing. Ultimately, it's a result, but I'd like to see us, play some nice football, get in the groove, practice those transitions that they've been working on and Barry loves banging on about, and hopefully, then in a comfortable position, we can see some of the sort of side cast, if you will, at the moment, get some minutes underneath their belt.
Yeah, and thanks to Jimmy Neal for pointing out the fact that the young team are actually playing tomorrow night, 7:30 kickoff, stone's throw from my house as they're playing at North Lodge Park in Pittodrie against Peterhead. I'm sure that'll be a tough game for them as well, given Peterhead's start to the season as well and beaten in their 2 games in League Two. Good test after beating Brora in the round before. So let's see. Unfortunately, Friday's game is not televised, although I'm sure those of you that have means and methods of finding games that are not on TV will do so. And given how good Stirling Albion TV's kind of highlights packages are, I'm sure they'll have something broadcast. Alan Borras hasn't actually kind of come out and said if it's even going to be on Red TV International either. Well, certainly that I remember seeing him. I mean, he's tagged in so much stuff, he's probably missed that genuine question, having to deal with some of the other idiocy that he has to deal with.
Possibly, quite possibly. Just one final thing, sort of, I've got to say on the game. Delighted that it's now on the Friday. Now, given the fact we're going to have to be travelling away to either Sweden or Lithuania on the Thursday, an extra day to prepare, to travel.
I mean, a day less to prepare for the game on Friday night compared to Stirling.
I don't know about you though, but I'd rather have the extra day for Stirling, and not to be disrespectful or too complacent, but I'd rather have the extra day for Stirling.
No, agreed. I'm looking forward to my trip to Forth Bank on Friday. It'll be ground 30 out of current 42 for me. You're going as well on Friday night. Have you gone for the stand or the terrace behind the goal?
Terrace. I did that without looking at the weather, but it looks lovely, so that's good. I was in the stand last time we were there, so I thought terrace, mix it up, why not?
Yeah, terrace for me too. I love a bit of old school terrace at the football as well. And yes, I did the exact same as well. Didn't look at the weather forecast. Thought I'd look at it this morning, and Friday looks to be the only day that is not raining in Stirling this week. So let's hope that stays the same. And we'll see those of you that are also in attendance at Stirling down there on Friday night. And both of us will be back reacting to what has happened on Friday night, reacting to the draw if we remain in the hat for the draw, and previewing the Europa League playoff as well, whoever those opponents are. As we said, right now set to be a trip to Gothenburg for the Dons a week on Thursday, but of course anything can happen in football as well. That will be a pre-recorded episode as well, due to Calum's upcoming holiday, but it will be released on Monday ahead of the game on Thursday. So if you are on YouTube, make sure to hit that subscribe button and notifications on. Same for audio as well. And Calum is eager to get a final point in as well.
Anything can happen.
Well, very good. I'm really disappointed. I didn't think of that as well.
Yeah,
on that disappointing note, thank you very much to those of you that have tuned in live to us here on Monday night, and we will be back with you next week. Enjoy your week, folks. See you then.